Hi, welcome or welcome back to the channel. Every 3 months, I like to do a quarterly reflection where I organize and gather my thoughts on the music that I've been making and the videos that I've been sharing here on this channel. These videos help me process all of the activity that happens around my music making, and I think they serve as a nice snapshot to document my musical thinking more directly every couple of months. It's winter 2025, and I'm coming out of a Jamuary and into a new year of music making. This is year 3 for this channel and the types of videos that I've been posting here. And I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be a fun new year full of some new things for myself, a couple of changes, and we'll get to all of that. So, in this video, I want to start by recapping what's happened over the past 3 months. And then I'll talk about some of the ideas that are most on my mind right now. And then I'll finish up the video by looking forward and talking about what's next for me and the channel. Looking back over the past quarter, November was largely dedicated to wrapping up my explorations of the mixing board in conjunction with effects pedals. I ended up making a 2-part explanation that covered a variety of different effects and also shared some more general thoughts on how to explore integrating the mixing board with other devices in feedback. After wrapping up the pedals project, I was doing some behind the scenes work to update some of the workflows and the graphics for the channel. The biggest improvement that I made in December was an office reorganization that let me bring a second desk into the space. I finally have a place where I can leave an instrument to work over multiple days without my main desk feeling cluttered. And this is an improvement not only for video recording, but for music making more generally for me. Up until this point, I've had to do a lot of setup and takedown every time that I've been working on a musical project. But for 2025 and going forward, I'm really looking forward to being able to use this second desk to support bigger, longer form musical projects with less interruption in the workflow of making them happen. And that brings me to the new year and Jamuary 2025. Jamuary is what started this YouTube channel back in 2023. I started recording modular synth jams for Jamuary 2023 because I was learning about modular synthesis and I was honestly quite intimidated by the idea of live performance. I felt that recording these jams and posting daily jams would give me a lot of practice for making and sharing sound. And I think that the best way to be comfortable with something is to practice it, which is to say, to do it a lot in a setting where the stakes aren't high. As I see it, you don't want your important performance to be your first performance. Coming around to last year, January 2024, I focused on the mixing board as my instrument for the month. Going into that month, I had a basic understanding of the mixing board as a feedback instrument and a lot of ideas that I wanted to explore. And I feel like January 2024 helped me transform that into both the series of explanations that serve as the foundation for my current approach to the mixing board, as well as the starting material for my first album, Feedback Mixing. Coming out of January 2024, I feel like I had had an incredibly productive month. And so this year, for January 2025, I thought that I would seek to replicate that 2024 productivity back into the world of modular synthesis. The majority of the videos for January 2025 were dedicated to patching on my experimental Eurorack system. I hadn't given my modular system a lot of attention over the past 6 months. So, by a measure of attention and work put in, I'm very happy with how Jamuary went this year. I feel like I've reconnected with the modular system in a really great way. And ultimately, this is the measurement that I think it's best by which to evaluate creative work internally. How you show up to a task and how you maintain a connection to it are the things that you have control over much more so than the outcomes of any given labor. But I also don't feel like I'm coming out of January 2025 with the same feeling of momentum that I had last year. Ultimately, I think there are two reasons for that. First, I think I was giving January 2024 too much credit for the productivity that I was feeling last year. The daily jam structure was a good fit for the energy that I was bringing to the month with the mixing board, but I think that the energy I was feeling at the end of the month was coming from me and the mixing board more so than the daily jam structure. Second, I've come to understand that the things I love about modular synthesis, and let me be clear that I do love modular synthesis. These things are not necessarily best aligned with live performance or quick jams. I like it when patching takes time, and I like searching for sounds and adjusting them carefully over time. For me, I want to use modular synthesis as part of a studio sound practice, and in retrospect, I don't think it was fair to expect Jamuary to be the structure that lit a fire for that specific type of work. As I said before, though, that's not to say that I don't consider this a successful Jamuary. I'm glad to have spent as much time as I did patching the system and sharing those sounds. What I mean to say is that I think for future years of Jamuary, I'd like to do away with this extraneous notion of productivity that I brought to my expectations this year. I think I find the month more refreshing when I just let sound be sound. This all transitions nicely, perhaps, to what I'm currently thinking about. Coming out of January 2025, I'm thinking a lot about modular synthesis and what specifically I like about it, and how I see it fitting into my music making practice as part of a broader tool set for sound. The thing that I really love about modular synthesis is the flexibility of patching for audio rate modulation and feedback, frequency modulation, amplitude modulation, X modulation. Modules provide all sorts of parameters to modulate at audio rate, and this means that one can be very intentional with how complexity is added to a waveform. In the past, I've talked about my interest in generativity at the level of the waveform, or you might say generativity in the context of sound design rather than generativity at the scale of form or composition. Feedback and audio rate modulation create complexity and generative structure with regards to the audio waveform. The thing that is being generated unexpectedly is the waveform. It's an experiment that plays out in timbre rather than musical form. And I think the thing I'm really interested in is the complexity of timbre. And for me, this experiment of timbre isn't something to capture necessarily as a live performance. Especially with modular synthesis, I want to layer and paint sound as a studio practice. The synthesizer is a sound palette or a music easel for studio art. And I've been thinking about what my workflow looks like for working with these tools of color in modular synthesis. And that brings me to the other big idea that I've been thinking about for 2025, and that is the idea of work that takes time. As a beginner, I've tried to focus on making many things rather than making big things. I think this is the best way to start with any creative endeavor. low stakes, modest expectations. Make, 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 finish quickly, and move on. Perfection blocks progression, and the most important thing is to grow comfortable with the act of making. The goal when starting out is for work to develop with ease. But I think there comes a time, as working becomes easy, where it becomes important to direct that work towards bigger projects. Working quickly is important to develop ease, but I don't think that it teaches you the same things as working slowly. And I think I'm ready to do more slow work right now. I want to maintain that feeling of work flowing smoothly, but to accumulate it into a larger project. I want to take my time with the comfort that I know how to do the work. This is, for me, what it means to depart from the feeling of being a beginner. And so I'm looking at collecting my efforts towards bigger projects. I'd like to put less focus on what I've termed the immediately complete and start gathering work instead. As part of this section on what I'm thinking about, I've decided that I'd also like to share a piece of writing and a piece of music that I feel have been particularly influential or interesting to my musical thinking over the past quarter. I see this both as a way to share more about the ideas that I'm thinking about, and also to snapshot some of my influences for me to look back on in the future. As I've been thinking about music lately in terms of painting, slow or minimal development, and the experience of sound itself, I've gravitated towards both the work and writings of Morton Feldman. Give My Regards to 8th Street is a collection of his writings, and they provide 100 little windows into not only his musical thinking, but also the specific creative world or scene in which Feldman was involved. Many of the writings in this book are quite brief, and I would describe the collection in whole as a fragmented cloud of thoughts more than an organized development of ideas. I actually really like that experience of drifting through the fragmented thoughts of the collection. There are ideas of material, scale, patience, the relationship of the artist to the artwork, and also to some sort of capital A art, ideas about how work happens and when it is complete. I feel like I drift through partial encounters with all of these ideas while I'm reading Feldman's writings. As for a musical selection, I'd like to note that I'm still thinking a lot about the album Arctic Winds by Maggi Payne. There's so much texture and patience and mystery across the album. And there's so much space open to listen. I think all of the tracks on the album demand that the listener actively listens in order to engage with the sound. And this labor of listening is something that I'm very interested in right now. I've always loved art that asks something, invites a little work from the listener or the viewer in order to connect with that art. Instead of reaching out to immediately grab your attention, it opens a door for you to step through with your attention. I like work that is at least a little bit labyrinthian, and I think that Arctic Winds provides that sort of invitation that I'm looking for in the way that I want to listen. I read Arctic Winds as being concerned with the experience of sound more than the role of sound in the experience of a narrative. Even in the cases where a particular place is being evoked by the sounds in conjunction with the track titles and the liner notes, I think there is an absence of narrative or event-oriented structure to the compositions. You do not travel through the pieces, but instead linger in them as masses of sensation. And for me, that makes it a beautiful album. So let's talk about what's happening next for me and for this channel. I'm excited for the musical work that I have ahead of me this year. As I said before, I'm thinking about bigger projects and spending more time on things before calling them complete. To support that, there are a few changes that I'm going to be making for my music making and for my video making on the channel this year. The most important thing that I want to note is that I'm going to be changing my video schedule for 2025. For the past 2 years, I've released 2 videos per week, just about every week of the year. This year, my goal is to release 2 videos per month and to create more music time for myself. The old upload schedule of 2 videos per week was so good for getting me to make things and share them. It gave me a lot of practice doing that. But I think it also put me in a position where I was making things often for the purpose of sharing them. And I'd like to spend 2025 getting more practice making things for myself and for my own enjoyment. With the new upload schedule of 2 videos per month, I see an opportunity to be more focused and intentional with the things that I share. The content of this channel will remain largely the same, a mix of informational videos and sound making videos using the mixing board, modular synthesizers, and various other electronic instruments. And my intention for this channel, as a place to document my process as an experimental musician, remains the guiding principle for what I do here. Specifically regarding the mixing board and no input techniques, I want to note that it will remain a significant part of what I do here. Going into 2025, I want to continue developing my comfort with the mixing board as a performance instrument and figuring out what exactly my sound is for the instrument in a live performance context. I also currently have ideas for a couple of additional informational videos about the mixing board as a feedback instrument. While I feel that I've documented most of my ideas about it at this point, there are a few things that I think can still be said to support the ideas in my existing videos on the topic. That being said, I'd also like to know if there's anything else specifically that people watching these videos would like to know. If you feel that there's something about the mixing board that I haven't covered, or if there's something about it as an instrument that still confuses you, please let me know in the comments. I think that just about covers everything that I wanted to say in this video. I think it's going to be a year full of exciting things for my music and for this channel. And I'm looking forward to focusing my efforts a little bit as I go into new projects for the year. Thank you to everyone who continues to engage with the sounds and the ideas that I share here. I hope you find lots of opportunities for making music in 2025, and I hope you have a great day.